Anyone who grew up with the GameCube at the time remembers that the cubic console was, like with anything Nintendo, derided for being kiddie, ignoring the fact that Nintendo did publish one Canadian-developed survival horror and another an American supernatural-themed first-person adventure. But since those didn't do the numbers of Halo and God of War as far as first-party published titles go, they didn't count until it was too damn late. Another reason it was dismissed as kiddie? The lack of an appearance of the most popular third-party series of the time, Grand Theft Auto. Be it either the tech bottlenecks like the small discs, or Rockstar couldn't bother with it due to the console's reputation, I don't know. Though it did have an exclusive spell of Resident Evil games from Remake, Prequel, and most infamously Resident Evil 4 for like 6 months. What the GameCube did also get are the clones of Grand Theft Auto, and one where Activision and Luxaflux decided to respond to that by being on the side of the law, with True Crime, Streets of LA. Side note, I actually played the PlayStation 2 version first when I lived in the UK, but I got it on the GameCube for the hell of it. And after a replay through, how does Activision's first response to the popularity of Rockstar's signature series? Let's find out. The story of the game follows Nicholas Kang Wilson, who is called upon by the chief of police to relieve his suspension as she believes his loose cannon behavior may be the best bet to solving a case involving bombings from the Chinese triads. Through the aid of his partner Rosie Velasco, who gets quickly oracled if you will, Nick discovers there is more to it as it involves the Russian mafia, founded by an ex-KGB agent and a North Korean paramilitary led by a general. Made worse when it also had the involvement of his late father and people close to him, such as a dirty cop named Rafferty, try and get to Nick to not be reckless. Needless to say, Nick remains determined to solve this case. A typical police action movie storyline, but it mostly works. And I say mostly because boy howdy can it shift moves. Already over the top, there is a plot down the road where they all of a sudden add some fantasy moments, going from a show like Fastlane to Big Trouble in Little China really quickly, down to a sorcerer being voiced by James Hong even, for like the 3rd time. Anyway, onto the gameplay, and True Crime Streets of LA is an open-world sandbox title with a crime theme, in response to the popularity of Grand Theft Auto. Instead of gangs, you're a cop, and you can choose to be a good cop by busting criminals and the like, to being a bad cop by committing murders of innocent people or killing unarmed perps. Unlike Grand Theft Auto, there are some different structures. I'll start with the action. Nick starts with shooting training at the start of the game, but how that activates is really awkward. Like, you gotta hold down the shoot button for him to pull out his guns and start blasting with the same button. Streets of LA also introduces to the shooting with a precision aim, where the camera will get close to Nick for what it exactly says, a more precise shot, and by shooting your enemies either in the head for bad cop points or in the legs for good cop points, but again, its activation is awkward. In fact, while the shooting can be fun, it's, one more time, awkward as all hell that can still resort to accidental bad cop points in the chaos. Though there is something hilarious about Nick dual-wielding assault weapons like he's Jaws from GoldenEye 007, or James Bond in the same game for that matter. Another mode to talk about are the fighting mechanics. In some stages, Nick will get into fisticuffs and display his martial arts against criminals, but even this is clunky. Nick will have to display some basic moves before an enemy is stunned, and it's up to you to figure out a button combo for a special move. Plus, it doesn't feel as fluid as it should. A smaller but notable mechanic is the stealth. It's just Nick trying to crouch, whack, or break necks, or tranquilize thugs while trying not to make noise, so don't expect Metal Gear or Splinter Cell levels of depth, especially with the basic level design. The most frustrating thing I can say is every time you're caught, you start all over every time. But I've never been great at stealth, so I can't criticize this too hard, except it's pretty damn immersion breaking to hear loud hip-hop in the background. But of course, what is a GTA-style sandbox game without the driving? In between missions, Nick obviously has to traverse a pretty massive and apparently GPS-accurate Los Angeles. So impressive that I'm amazed that they fit this in one tiny GameCube disc. Not without flaws, as there are a couple of spots where the devs at Luxaflux and Exact seem to have missed a couple spots. Of course, some chapters in the game have driving-centric missions, which involve either getting to the next location in a very limited amount of time, quite a few of them being trial and error to trying to stealthily tail a suspect. Since you're a cop, True Crime Streets of LA gives the option to, well, be a cop. Occasionally, Nick will get crime alert calls from the staff at EOD. And of course, especially if you want to be a bad cop, you can go insane and massacre everyone like you can in Grand Theft Auto. Something I never tried to do because I don't feel like making the city less of a livable place, and the only time I did it in criminal-centric Saints Row were because minigames had to be played. Plus, the clunky mechanics of shooting and fighting make it kind of not recommended. Still, and sad to say with the driving, it's not much better than the shooting or the fighting. In fact, it's actually worse. The driving actually feels too loose sometimes. It's again really easy to get accidental bad cop points when you're working to be a good cop. One more thing to mention is how True Crime Streets of LA handles its story. Story mode is managed by selectable chapters, and depending on how well you play the levels, you either zoom through swimmingly or in some levels anyway, you can skip them. But expect alternate cutscenes, and being blocked from a bonus driving mode where you can upgrade your perks in the 3 primary modes: driving, shooting, and fighting. But you're gonna want to do the 100% completion of each chapter for as much as you can, for especially fighting and shooting, as those seem to be the vital 2 for survival in this game. At least with driving, again, it takes trial and error. Still, even if you do 100% each chapter, alternate story paths open up. On the poor cop branch, Nick discovers the North Korean involvement in the crimes too soon. On the average cop branch, Nick is on a revenge spree for a possible unfortunate fate with his brother, which can take him to an S&M club owned by the Russian mafia.
What the?
Yeah, I'm with you, Nick. And seeing poor Rosie held hostage in that situation? Yikes. Anyway, keep patient well enough and you'll get the best ending possible, even without getting all the bonus driving levels. But you can go back and replay them if you are a completionist. But it's also recommended you do the poor and average paths to rack up points that double as currency for the training missions to unlock upgrades. As far as story is concerned, it's a pretty unique idea, and that I think works well enough to keep all sorts of curiosities sated if you're interested. Moving on to the sound, and True Crime Streets of LA enjoys a licensed soundtrack from mainly rap and hip-hop artists, but it still fits the mood all the same, though there is some rock and metal in there too. I just have personal gripes with some of the artists in here, mainly Snoop Dogg and Megadeth, because Dave Mustaine, and there are even original tracks composed by Sean Murray. No, not that one. That give the mood of one of the more lighthearted crime shows. Even the action sounds, at least on GameCube and PlayStation 2, sound great. Let's also not forget the casting here. The majority of major characters are played by fairly sizable names in Hollywood. Russell Wong as Nick Kang, whose performance make me kinda like Nick when others don't.
Hey Rosie, say hello to the poster child against inbreeding, Jimmy Fu.
CCH Pounder as the Chief.
Nice shooting, Nick. I'd hate to be in your crosshairs.
Michelle Rodriguez as Rosie Velasco.
You don't know me. I used to run with more than a few Latino gangs. I made mistakes, but I was lucky enough to get a second chance, and no one's gonna ruin it for me.
Gary Oldman, who has 2 roles as the Russian mafiosi Rocky and FBI agent Masterson, being even more of the typical stick-up-his-ass boss more than the chief.
That's too slow. We'll never learn to all of it in time.
Look, smartass, you completely blew out surveillance of the spa. The bad guys are probably in Tijuana by now.
Michael Madsen as Don Rafferty.
You may not remember me, but I worked undercover jobs with your dad.
I thought you looked familiar.
Yeah, I remember you and Carrie driving your dad nuts with your Green Hornet stick.
The late great Mako as General Kim.
This money was for my country. We will starve no more.
Look at that. And I was just thinking you were some...
I want my money now!
As mentioned before, James Hong as Ancient Wu.
Ah, Nicholas Kang Wilson. We meet at last.
Ancient Wu, you're looking well for a cadaver.
Come on, Nicholas. I'm only 342 years old.
And of course, Christopher Walken as Kang family friend and mentor, George.
Don't mind that chooch, Nick. Let me tell you, it's great to have you back.
Whoa, George, you're jumping the gun. I haven't agreed to anything just yet.
You should. It would have made your old man proud. If you were my boy, and you didn't take this opportunity, I'd beat the living crap out of you. Till you said, sure, I'll take the opportunity.
And in the background, you have some pretty identifiable voice actors from other game projects and cartoons.
Nice.
Who told you? Gypsy?
Come on. I'm only asking 20% cut.
Okay, fanboy. Fine.
That's with an officer? Okay, you got me, you got me. You want to read?
Visually, at least on PlayStation 2 and GameCube, the game looks pretty damn good. In fact, I think the character models look better than the GTA games of the time. But there are some differences for sure, like where the GameCube version can look worse in some city spots in contrast to the PlayStation 2 version, somehow the GameCube version has better looking guns. Like in the PlayStation 2 version, the guns are all black, while the GameCube version, some of the guns like the revolver are shinier and have more detail. Not a bad looking game for either system though. Overall, for all its hype of the time, True Crime Streets of LA is a pretty rough game for how its primary three mechanics play out, with the driving being the worst. But that said, underneath its rough gameplay, there was a start of something decent, and I think it's worth playing at least once to see it.